Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Tio, and in this video we'll talk about the most effective techniques to learn a language from scratch and take it to at least conversational level in a very short period of time. I personally speak 5 languages at an advanced level and have a BA in modern and medieval languages, so have my amount of language learning experience. In this video, I want to share with you what I learned after 18 years of studying languages. In order to make this video more digestible, I split the process into 3 core techniques, which in combination will yield impressive results when it comes to language learning. Ordered according to the level of commitment it takes to fulfill them, they are exposure, routine, and immersion. So let's take a look at the first technique. The first thing we need to do right when we start learning a language is get exposed to it as often as possible. And the easiest way to do so is consume as much content in the target language as possible. For once, watching TV counts as doing something. And nowadays there's plenty of chance to do so apart from watching TV. We can search for Netflix, Prime and HBO shows which are originally in the target language. We can surf the web and read the news in the language, or even go as far as setting our phone and computer to default in that language so that all our media consumption over the period when we're actively trying to learn the language happens exclusively in the language. Depending on our purpose for learning that language, we may also think about acquiring a book or two, even simplified books, in order to read and commit to reading them, in order to get to grips with the literary language, the literary aspect of the language that we're trying to learn. But make sure you consume stuff that you like, that is relevant to you. Psychologist Chris Lonsdale, who learned Mandarin in 6 months, stressed in a TED Talk that the language information that you're being exposed to must be of relevance to your own life in order for you to most effectively learn it. Much like you learned that a large scratch on a tree in a forest and a large footprint on the ground mean that there is a bear nearby, which is life-threatening to you. That information is crucial for your own survival, that's why your brain will immediately learn it. It's the same kind of mechanisms that you want to trigger in your brain so that you learn a language as fast as possible. Back to the technique we were talking about, by reading and listening to everything in the target language, you have the chance to experience the language as it is in its live environment, and not in the stale way in which it is often presented in textbooks. Of course, textbooks are really important for you to acquire key grammatical rules so that you can speak the language correctly and not just approximate it, and also have a chance at taking that language to an advanced level. But simultaneously, we also need to expose ourselves to the forms of the language in which it is most alive. It's like the difference between listening to David Attenborough describing a lion on Discovery Channel and going out on a safari to see the lion yourself in its natural habitat. Languages are alive, and we must not be afraid to expose ourselves to them in this way. We may not understand a word on the first day, but we may notice a repeating phrase on the second, or even make out the meaning of a few words on the third day. The key is to keep at it and limit contact to other languages while doing so. I cannot stress enough how much using the computer, surfing the internet and watching films helped me master the English language in my youth. Because I was doing this on a daily basis, it became almost second nature to me to speak, think, write, and sometimes even dream in English. And this brings me to the second point, which is sticking to a daily practice routine. Like with anything we have to learn, doing something for 15 minutes every day is way better than doing the same thing for 2 hours every Saturday. Our goal here is, beside passively consuming content in the language, to also actively produce words and sentences in the target language. It is my view that for this we do need to do some traditional grammar and vocabulary exercises, because they are really good active recall exercises for you to be doing. Each individual exercise asks us to recall a specific information in order to answer a question or complete a certain phrase. In this way, these exercises will help us consolidate information that we had previously unconsciously acquired while listening and reading. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for learning foreign languages naturally, like we learn our mother tongue. But at the same time, I believe that properly learning grammatical rules and specific vocabulary opens many new pathways towards a more advanced usage of the language, for which general conversational fluency is not enough, such as studying in the language, working in more advanced linguistic or cultural fields in the language, or even conducting research in the language or at a university where this language is spoken. A useful memory aid for learning specialized vocabulary is a technique called targeted memory reactivation, which you can perform before falling asleep. And if you'd like to find out more about it, you can check out this video right here or the link in the video description. I really recommend you watch this video I made recently, because I bet you'll remember stuff better after watching it. Now, by far the best way of learning a language, but which also requires a lot of commitment, is by immersing ourselves in an environment where only the target language is being spoken. This will force us to listen a lot and listen carefully, as well as pay attention to body language in order to understand and communicate meaning when we don't know the words. This situation might put us in the survival state of mind about which we were talking earlier. Also, we get the chance to look at native speakers and observe the way they use their facial muscles in order to produce the sounds that are necessary in order to properly pronounce their language. For me personally, coming to Vienna to language learning summer camps in 3 consecutive summers to learn German was the best step I could ever take. When I first came here, I had great difficulty creating correct sentences in German, and I was still thinking a lot in my head about the grammar and what cases I need to use, what endings go with the cases, and it was all a mess, and that was taking a long time to even say something. While I was here, however, I could only speak German, and I would only rarely use English to communicate to the other students. And this was the biggest step for me. By my 3rd camp, I was fully able to create correct sentences in German, and I would start a sentence and speak to teachers and classmates, and then at the end just realize that I hadn't checked the grammar in my head. And I would check it after the fact, and most of the time it proved to be right, and finally I could speak German. So basically in 2 years I became fluent in German, and I mean conversational fluency, because what followed was a long period of becoming an advanced user of German in order to study the culture and the literature more in depth at university. But if you think about it, even 3 weeks of total immersion are so worth it and are so efficient. If you have 2 hours of classes and 1 hour of homework per week in a language, and there are 52 weeks in a year, then you can have approximately 156 hours of language training in that language for the entire year. But in 3 weeks of summer camp with 6 hours a day of language practice plus 2 more hours of general interaction in the language, you can have 120 hours of practice in 3 weeks. Not even counting the weekends, when you could actually also be using the language when going out with your classmates and exploring the surroundings, which would bring a potential extra 48 hours of language practice. So in 3 weeks of intensive immersion, you can accomplish much more than you can in an entire year of traditional language classes. And besides that, you also learn it more naturally, more like your mother tongue, like you had to when the only way to communicate was to learn this thing called language. Now, one last tip I would have for any language learner based on my own personal experience is to avoid at all costs learning a foreign language by translating it to your mother tongue, because that is an unnecessary double process. Rather than doing that, link the new words to your mental representations of things. Personally, I have a very vivid feeling, image, or sensation attached to every word or sound, and it helps me bypass my mother tongue connections when speaking a different language. As I later found out from Chris Lonsdale, this technique is called direct connect, and it totally clicked with me because I've been doing this for years, and I think you should be trying this too. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you're new here, subscribe and click the bell notification button to find out when I post new videos. They're all about language learning, study tips, book summaries and reviews, study with me videos, and I'd be really glad to have you on board and join in the conversation. So that's it for now. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye bye.